myself, I get to do this, and my parents never did this for me.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, your dad was a principal. I know he was probably busy as can be.
Yeah.
You know, my parents were on drugs most of my life, so like I didn't get to do this kind of stuff unless, you know, my choir director who invested in me, and she was the one that like made sure I had money to go on trips and that sort of thing. And so like, I had that going for me, and so once my parents got clean, by the time the parents got clean, I was a master's commission. You know, so I was already kind of grown up enough where I remembered all the bad stuff. You know, and so it's eye opening this year when everything's going together and my daughters are going here and there, and I'm like, okay, I get to be what I wanted my parents to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Bro, I think that's that's so dope because like I actually was talking to, do you remember Heather Parody?
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to Heather last week, and we were kind of talking about like how different life is and like some of the stuff that like impacts us from our childhood and how we do things different and stuff. And I was telling her, I was like, man, you know, one of the things that I like love about being a dad is the fact that like like I get to work out some of this stuff in real time that like in the past have looked back and been like, man, I wonder why dad didn't do this. I wonder why mom didn't do this. And like I get to be able to see in real time like what the answers to those are, you know? Like I have a good relationship with my parents.
Yeah.
But like I've seen other people like have these kind of like complicated relationships with their family, and I've looked at them and I've been like, bro, like how can you not ...
Yeah.
Like I got my kids, how can you not blah blah blah? And then like I get to certain stages of life and I'm like,
oh, that's how.
that's how. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like the majority of my kids are adopted. And there have been seasons of life where I'm like, bro, it's so trash that like you have 4 years to get your stuff together and you didn't get that stuff together, and so now you don't have your kids.
Yeah.
And like in my brain I'm like, how can you not get your stuff together? And then like it's those times where life gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right? Like where, and you wouldn't think that like with kids that them just being kids could irritate you to the point where you just want to go away.
Oh yeah, you want to find a quiet room at least.
Right.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But you get but like it's those moments where I'm like, maybe I should have a little bit more grace for these people that are, you know, have had whatever type of hard time it is.
I was listening to a podcast the other day. The guy said, you know, I always overdo grace. And that's hard, bro.
That's good, yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. He said he was talking to somebody that was talking about his coworkers or whatever. It was like a business situation. And he was like, I always overdo grace.
Yeah.
Because I would much rather be the guy that overdid grace and be known for that than the guy that was known for being a jerk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
No doubt.
It hit me right here because I was like, dude, in everything I do I overdo grace?
Yeah.
And why do I take that in my brain? Because that's not normal, right?
Right.
You take that in your brain as I'm letting them walk all over me.
Right, right.
And I'm like, but is that
Especially-
such a bad thing?
Especially, and maybe you don't have this experience, but like growing up in the place where I grew up, like you had to over project masculinity,
Yeah.
right? And so if somebody said something crazy to you,
Yeah.
then you had to say, "I'm gonna cut you."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this kind of goes into like whenever some of the interactions that we had, right?
Yeah.
So, so like growing up the way that I grew up, up till I was 17 years old,
Yeah.
I have always been the smallest guy, and you
Yeah,
know a little
I've
bit
been
something
too.
about that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So always been the smallest guy, so I had to be the one that lifted the most in the room.
Yeah,
I had to run the fastest.
Yeah.
And if those two couldn't take care of me, then I needed to pull out my knife. I wasn't gonna shoot you, but I'll cut you, which sounds a little bit more crazy.
No. So it was funny. A friend our mutual friend came over, Lewis. He came
Yeah.
over and he was talking. He's talking to my wife. He was like, "I've never seen Josh get into a fight, but I've never seen him back down from a fight, and I've always heard him go, man, I'm really glad I didn't have to get into that fight because I was always the little dude, right?
Right.
And so if somebody step up to me, you step back,
Right.
You know, you step back and you get crazy. Now, luckily, I had friends that were bigger than me, right, and so most people knew that if they whooped me, 2 or 3, people, my brother and some other would come, but I would always be the guy to step up to somebody, cussing, spitting, yelling, come back, and not because I wanted to fight, but because I didn't want to be the wuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I know that some of the things that kind of contributed to what like I saw as a man, like obviously I saw my dad, right, and every young man's first example of what a man is supposed to be. Well, I won't say it's supposed to be. What a man is whatever interaction that they have with their father. It may be no interaction at all. It could be drug dealing. It could be assistant principal of a high school, whatever it is, right? So, like, my example was, like, my dad, he has always been in education. And, like, in education, I had all kinds of different versions of seeing what it was to be a man, like. But something else that kind of contributed to that is like Lil Wayne, Young Jeezy, T.I., Bone Crush, like
Because they're strong male figures.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so some of these examples that I had, like, it didn't even, like, even though I had a dad at home that like took care of me, made sure that I was disciplined, had what I needed, it didn't even register to me that those were not the best examples of what manhood is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you also, I mean, you can't use clickbait for the 90s because it kind of didn't exist. But it's kind of the same concept. I mean, all you saw of these men were the parts that look cool.
Yeah.
The parts that were out there, You didn't see the part where he went to jail for something stupid.
Right.
You do now because social media puts that everywhere.
Exactly.
But when you're 13, in the 90s we were like 13, 14, something like that. I mean, all you hear is a cool song. You get to read the dirty lyrics that your parents are going to see in the booklet. And then you look on MTV back when they played music.
Right.
And
MTV Uncut.
he's got a bunch of pretty girls dancing around him. You're like, that guy.
Right.
Like, I understand 100%, For me, it took a while for me to really realize what a man needs to be for his kids. It took a while for me to realize what a man needs to be for his kids, but that's kind of part of the reason why I waited 8 years to have kids.
Yeah.
My wife and I have been married. It'll be 17 years in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And I remember that 8-year period having to go through like a forgiveness period for my parents because and this is kind of a long story, but my biological father left me when I was like really little, like I would say younger than 2, and I've kind of put pieces together through talking to my mom, and I've met a couple of siblings that I never want to meet in person. If you see the podcast, sorry. But, no, so I never really knew my biological father other than like a picture, right?
Yeah.
And so the story goes, we were living in California, and I lived in California until I was 11. He came with my mom from Ohio to California, and I was born, and then he wanted to go back to Ohio on a train. And my mom said, I'm not taking a newborn on a train.
Yeah.
End of story, and it's winter in Ohio, storm, snow, whatever, Well, he ended up getting a plane ticket, flying back. The goal was to make money, fly my mom and I back to Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Instead, she didn't want to go on the train with the kid. He flies to Ohio, supposed to, get money to go back. And instead, my mom gets a call from a grandma of a 14-year-old kid, and he's 25 at the time, and he had knocked her up. And she was wanting to know when my mom was going to sign divorce papers. And my mom had no idea what was going on.
Wow.
And my mom said, well,
Hold on. So you're saying he got a 14-year-old pregnant. 14-year-old calls mom and says, "Hey, where them papers at?"
No, grandma. Grandma calls my mom.
Gotcha.
So, and you got to remember, this is in the 80s.
Wow.
Right? And so, I later met that woman on the phone.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story. But, so all this is happening. My mom says, so he's just going to leave his, kid like that,
Yeah.
and she was, that's basically the old lady said, well, he told us that the only kid he ever had walked out into the street, got hit by an ice cream truck, and his mom was too doped up to know the difference.
That's crazy.
And so, at the time, I'm living in Pittsburgh, California with my mom. My bedroom is a closet. We're living in like a little shack-looking thing.
Yeah.
And you got to go through the bathroom to the closet. And
Yeah.
my room is the closet. My mom has a bedroom. And then there's a little living room area. So it's like it's like what you would rent in Branson if you got like a two-person,
Right.
cabin. And we lived in like a cul-de-sac. And my mom's brother and sister-in-law lived in one. And then who later became my stepdad lived across the way. And so at the time, my mom didn't know what to do. She just filed for divorce, and that was back when the divorce papers went through the newspaper.
Yeah.
And he didn't find out they was divorced till the next year on their anniversary.
That's crazy.
And so so I started life without really a good example of either a male or a female.
Right.
And so we had what is it, patriarch, matriarch? When it's a dude? Patriarch, I guess, yeah. So my uncle was kind of the guy that everybody leaned on because, way backstory, he ended up taking on all of my sisters, or my mom and her sisters and her brother when he was 16 years old.
Yeah.
Him and my aunt got married when they were 16. They were the second oldest, and they all went to live with him eventually. And that's a whole story in and of itself because my mom's parents died when she was very young.
Yeah.
And so she was raised by teenagers.
Right.
And so she didn't know how to, because what do you do when you're a teenager and you got a baby? Everything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
if you're 16 and you got a baby with you,
Yeah.
you take care of that baby. They're not taking care of themselves.
Right.
And so what did she do when I needed something? She went to my aunt and handed me over.
Yeah.
Because my mom, she wasn't a teenager when she had me, but that's how she was raised.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, like, they were the example that we all had, right? And so, going through all that, growing up, it took me a while to realize that, like, the forgiveness factor had to be big because, my stepdad who came into my life, he had a crummy upbringing too.
Yeah.
They didn't know it was crummy until they were older.
Yeah.
But it was a crummy upbringing.
I think that's how a lot of us are, though. Is like, we don't, like one of the stories that I tell is that, like, I remember having these Dollar General sneakers.
Yeah.
And, like, I didn't even know I was poor till I got to 7th grade. But, like, my parents, like honestly, straight up, I didn't even know, like, Jordans exist till, like, I was 12. And, but I didn't know any better.
Well, and, like, the craziest thing for me with all that is we weren't really poor. My mom and dad just spent their money way foolishly.
Yeah.
So, like, we lived like we were poor.
Bruh.
Well, I mean, I don't glorify this. They're clean now. Everything's cool. But my mom and dad were addicts when I was really young.
Yeah.
But my dad's worked on, like, oil refineries and, like, done that kind of work.
Good money.
You know what I'm saying? Like, in the 90s, he told me at one point he was making $65,000 a year on a slow year.
Good.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
And I'm like, why we live in this busted house?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But honestly, after my dad got clean and my mom got clean, they didn't know how to manage money. And
Right.
my sister even told my dad once, you treat money like it's poison.
Yeah.
The more you get it, the more you got to give it away.
Keep throwing it out.
My dad's the kind of guy that if he likes you,
Yeah.
he'll buy everything for you. He'll buy you the world.
Yeah.
And he won't even think about his money. He'll just buy it for you, right?
Yeah.
That's how he's always been. Like, anytime he messed up for us kids, it was, here's $20. Like,
Yeah.
like, that's just, honestly, I think his love language is gift giving.
Yeah.
And, things have, now that he's retired, things have kind of, and he's got to look at his money,
Yeah.
things have kind of changed. But, like, growing up, I remember, I remember living not so great, but
Yeah.
I had a job.
Yeah.
I lied on my job application. I got a job a month before I turned 14.
Yeah.
I lied on my job application. I was working at a restaurant, and I've had a job ever since. And I remember spending all my money as quickly as I got it because I wanted to look like I had money.
Right.
I had a car earlier than everybody else. Now it was busted, but it was a car by then. You know, I had new clothes when I wanted them. I bought everybody food whenever we went out somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, I paid for Curtis Newman.
Yeah,
I paid for his Taco Bell so many times. And of course, Lewis and Curtis would all hang out, and then eventually, I got to the end of high school realizing I ain't got any money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've definitely been in that same place. Like, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently is like, what are some things that I have learned both from my family and from like the people that I spent time around over the last 20 years, and what are some of the things that like I need to like refine. Some of the things I can take and I can like throw them out, and then other things I'm like, okay, so that wasn't all bad. So like that you can think of, because you kind of gave us an example of like what your upbringing experience was. Like what are some like positive what are some positive things that you feel like you took from the time that you were spending at home?
My dad always stood up for his family. Now, he wasn't always nice to
What did that look like?
Well, the best example is a prank. So, I come home one day, and I remember I was on the school bus, and it was around Halloween time, and it's after Halloween, though, right?
Yeah.
So it passed. And a friend of mine was like, "You want this? I don't want it." And it was a tube of that fake blood, right? So I put it all over my face.
Oh, no.
And I went home, and he said, "What happened?" I said, "I got into a fight." And he believed me. And my dad jumped up out of his chair. My dad was like, "Who is it? Where is he?" And I was like, "You ain't gonna fight a kid, Dad." And he was like, "No, I'm gonna whoop his daddy." Like he was ready. And I was like, "Dad, it's fake blood." He was like, "Don't ever do that to me again." But he was ready. You know what I'm saying?
That man about to go to jail.
Exactly. Dude, he was ready. And that's the kind of thing that my dad always, that was my dad's version of safety.
Yeah.
You go to daddy, he'll take care of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I mean, I think kids need that.
Right.
Kids need to know that if you had to, you would knock the bully out instead of call the police.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, but for us, it's if you had to, because I ain't gonna knock out a kid, right?
Right.
I'm a teacher. Don't get me arrested, all right? So like,
yeah.
But your kids need to know that when push comes to shove, you'll get in the way of that sword.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think my dad was a really good example of that.
Yeah. What do you think is like that you can think of, and you can give a couple examples if you want, are things that like you've been like, okay, so because of this, I don't want to do that.
Oh, that happened early on. So my dad, and I think it's because of his upbringing. My dad, and when I say dad, I'm talking about my stepdad. I'm not talking about because he's my dad.
Right.
But my dad was always the kind of dad that was very highly dependent upon his wife.
Yeah.
Right. To some degree, that's cool. Right. I heard a comedian the other day say, "I store things in your brain so that I can remember them later, like my shoe size and where my keys are, and that sort of thing."
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, but my dad was the kind of guy that like, and it might be because he was hungover a lot, I don't know, but he was the kind of guy that would lay up and holler for mom across the room for just about everything.
Yeah.
And I remember being little and probably about my daughter's age, I'd say probably about 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there, and I remember telling my mom, "I'm not going to yell for my wife like that."
Yeah.
That young,
Yeah.
and I never have. Now, when I'm sick, that's a different story. We're all babies, but but like I like my wife being independent.
Yeah.
And I like that I have a little bit of independence. We work together that way. You know what I'm saying? And even to this day, we make fun of my dad because it's the world ends if he has to make his own plate of food sometimes.
Yeah.
So like, but we love him, and it's the way that they think, and there's been a few times where I've made fun of him, and he's like, "Josh, I don't make fun of the way you do things." And I said, "All right, Dad, I'm sorry."
My bad.
My bad, Dad.
No, yeah. So guys, we've been talking for like 15, maybe 16 minutes or something like that. This is the Show Me Better in Real Life podcast. We got my friend Josh here. We went to school together a long time ago. We met whenever we were still young, and now we're old guys. Can you believe that? So think about it like this, right? So when I came to Masters, I was 17 years old, I'm sorry, I was 18. I had just turned 18 years old, and
Wow, I was 19.
and you were 19 years old, right? So that means we
I
have.
think so. How do you know?
I'll be 38 this year.
Yeah, I'll be 39 this year. So yeah.
So we have been friends for almost 20 years, bro.
Wow.
20 years.
We're old, bro.
Old, bro. Old.
But you ain't got an ounce of gray on you. Look.
Oh, it's there.
It's
Trust
there.
Me, it's there.
You know how to hide it.
Right. So the reason why I have my friend on is just because like I value people's stories, and I value like what us as a community can get from different people's stories. So like the last couple of podcasts, just kind of give you an idea of what I've been talking about. It's just been about building relationships. So the Show Me Better podcast, the majority of the reason for it is to resource whoever will listen with tips on parenting, what it looks like to be a man, some of the positive ways that we are able to become up the adults and the people that we're meant to, and some of the things that we can learn from, some poor choices, some mistakes that people have made. And so the main focus that I always speak from, obviously, is from a dad, from a grandfather, from a husband, right? But I feel like it gives perspective to everybody from my perspective, and then sometimes I have comments that kind of come in and provide some context from different perspectives. Like a couple of videos ago, one of the things that I did was I posted on Facebook. I was like, hey, you know, how many of you guys have had like kids that have had big emotions? What's some of the ways that you have positively dealt with the big emotions? What's some of the ways that you have negatively dealt with those emotions? And so we had a probably 8 or 9.
I think I commented on that one.
Yeah. 8 or 9 different like responses. And so here in just a second, I'd love to get maybe a couple of examples if you don't mind.
Okay.
But like just a couple of things like that, so that way we, because man, one of the things that I believe is that one of the reasons people don't find themselves in a place of success, or at least better than what they know, is because they don't have access to other people's lives. And so that's what the purpose of Show Me Better is. It's literally show me better whoever the audience is. And honestly, I'm really looking forward to, in 10 years, looking back on some of these videos and being like, man, I was here at this place and now I'm here.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's kind of where we're at. So getting back to what we were talking about.
Great introduction halfway through.
Right. Just had to throw that intro in there.
You might have to edit things, right?
Oh yeah. So anyway, something that I am constantly trying to do is run over the game tape of my life.
Okay.
Right? And so I think about things in a jumbled mess, right? So now that I'm 37 years old, a couple of the things that have really been at the top of my like list of things to like work at is my relationship with my kids. It seems like, and maybe you have this experience too, or maybe not, but it seems like the older I get, the easier it is for me to be grumpy.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to be tired. I was actually talking about on a different podcast, like how I didn't name the name, but me and Darren a long time ago, we were talking about like how we were gonna have our kids saying inappropriate things and like, you know, making donut runs and, you know, stuff like that. And like now that I'm here, I'm like, oh no, I can't say that. Because if my son says this thing that he has heard me say, like, then that's going to put him in trouble. And that didn't take into consideration. Like, it goes from being funny to, like, real serious real fast. Like, just even thinking about Izzy, he's 15 now.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was thinking about a while back some of the things that me and Dee were like, oh, we're gonna have him say such and such at such and such time. And I'm like, my 15-year-old son he's black in America right now.
Yeah. And
it's not that every person that he runs into, as a matter of fact, we live in a great community, but all it takes is one time saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, now you got a bad reputation.
Yeah.
And at the very least, it's going to be more difficult for you to get a job, not necessarily because of your skin color, but because you run your mouth, because you say things that don't make sense.
Yeah,
You know?
one of my colleagues put a quote out that said, and I'm paraphrasing, it's horrible, he's a teacher what he does is he puts little quotes out in front of his door so we walk by.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's more for the teachers than the kids, but he
Yeah.
said, disrespect will close doors that
Yeah.
apologies will never reopen.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, and I was like, dude, why you gotta do me like
Yeah.
that? You
Yeah.
know, because I can think of times where I've lost it.
Yeah.
And I can't ever get that time back.
Yeah.
And who I lost it toward, they're not going to reopen that door because what if I lose it again?
Exactly.
You know?
Can you repeat that one more time? Just even if it's a paraphrase.
It's a paraphrase. It said, disrespect will close doors that apologies will never reopen.
Okay, you can keep going.
And I mean, I could think of times where I've lost it and I've lost friendships. I've lost
Yeah.
even I won't say business deals, but like, you know, important things that could have happened in my life didn't happen because
Yeah.
somebody saw me as not mature enough, or
Yeah.
somebody saw me. You know, as a young man, you know, when you're not learning how to regulate your emotions, then you lose it easily.
Exactly.
And you could probably remember me from Master's Commission, man. I'd fly off the handle whenever I got
Yeah.
frustrated, and
Yeah.
luckily I had a lot of grace in that building, but which is why I feel like, you know, I'm not super religious anymore, but I do feel like God put me in that place and not college earlier, because had
Yeah.
I gone to college like that, I never would have graduated.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Man, like, that's one of the things I tell my kids all the time. Is like every moment is preparation for the next.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't treat every moment, and like it sucks because it's like it gives you pressure, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I think it's pressure that like creates you into who it is that you're meant to be. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and we were talking about like what some people would consider bullying their kids, right?
Yeah.
But like, and you got girls, and so it may be a little different for you.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, I have to find myself, like, I found myself working really hard at like, not talking to my kids the way sometimes my dad would talk to me. So like, as a young man, like he'd be like, bro, you look homeless. Like, I would be in the hallway because my dad was the assistant principal at my high school. I'll be in the hallway and like I might have ate some onions or like forgot to brush my teeth that day.
He'd have me like, look, you smell bad.
Yeah, he'd be like, son, did you brush your teeth? It smelled like straight doo-doo. I'm like, ah. And at first it like hurt my feelings. I was real sensitive, right?
Yeah.
But then before long, like I feel like that kind of like prepared me for like interactions with people that didn't care about my feelings at all.
Yeah.
And you know, at one point I was like, man, why is my dad so mean to me all the time?
Well, and honestly, that transition is kind of what is causing, in my opinion, the hyper focus on emotion right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? 'Cause
Yeah.
we are going, hey, I don't want to treat my kids that way.
Right.
But the byproduct of that is, oh, my kids think people care about their feelings.
Right.
You know? And
So let me ask you this then, because I 100% agree with what you're saying. Like, we have overcorrected,
I
right,
believe
in a
that.
lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
But then you also got to sit with the fact that, like, okay, yeah, there are people that are overcorrecting, but what's the balance? So, like, now, with my boys, my oldest, he's out of the house. He's a teacher now. But, like, whenever Corbin was in the house, like, he would walk out with some bright green pants on, some red, and it wasn't even Christmas time. Had on some purple shoes. I'm like, bro, what is wrong with you? Go change. He's like, what? It's just my style. I said, it's a bad style. Go change. Go change. Right? And so there would be times where Mandy would be like, why are you so hard on him? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, he needs it. He needs it, right?
Yeah.
But, then there's other times where I'd be like, I say things and I'm like, man, I probably went too far. So, in your opinion, like, do you feel like that, I'm going to just say it, do you feel like kids need to be bullied before they get bullied? Or do you think that there's a balance between showing them a little roughness before they hit the real world?
So it depends on what your definition of bullying is.
Okay.
Bullying, to me, is repetitive behavior that's unwanted.
Oh, well, I got bullied my whole life.
Now, if you got repetitive behavior that's unwanted from someone else, and it happens on the daily, then that's bullying. There's a big difference, in my opinion, between you trying to stop your kids from being made fun of outside and somebody making fun of them outside.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't necessarily think that you're doing wrong by telling your kids, hey, you look homeless right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're doing something wrong if you're breaking your kid's spirit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, but where's that line?
For example,
that line,
here's where I broke the line just yesterday.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
My daughter. Okay, we're weird. Okay, my daughter was doing this thing where you get that Baby Bell cheese,
Yeah.
and it's got the wax around it. She was saving the wax. She was balling it up.
Yeah.
And she's trying to make a puffer fish.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I was letting her do it. I thought it was kind of crazy. But then, next thing you know, her and her sister are upstairs fighting over a puffer fish. Right? Because her sister thought it was trash and threw it away. And they cleaned up after the dog, and it landed next to the dog crap in the trash. And she didn't want to reach in and get it. So next thing you know, I've got to take the trash out because there's dog crap in the trash. Right. And so I'm over here, and I went, and they're yelling, they're kids, they're bickering back and forth. Yeah. One's almost 9, one's 5.
Yeah.
So they're gonna fight. And I looked at my daughter and I was like, I am tired of hearing you fight over this dumb ball of wax.
Yeah.
Immediate tears.
Yeah.
Because I called something that she created dumb.
Yeah.
Boom. Right? And in my mind, dumb was not that bad of a thing to say. And obviously I don't think she's dumb.
Right.
And then I had to remember, number 1, she's 8.
Yeah.
Number 2, she's a girl.
Yeah. And
so I found myself holding the baby while she's crying over a ball of wax that I called dumb. Bro. Because Dad hurt her little feelings. And at that moment in time, though, I took something that she worked really hard on and I called it dumb. I didn't see that until afterwards.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you've got to be able to look at your kids and number 1, say you're sorry.
Yeah.
Because you're not always going to get it right.
Right.
But number 2, if you can try to look at your kids through the lens of, what am I speaking on right now?
Right.
Because there's a big difference. I guarantee you, Corbin left that room with the first thing he saw to put on.
Yeah.
That's not his style.
Yeah.
He was trying to go out, and you knew that. He was trying to go out the door looking crazy, right? But it would be different if he spent...
Actually, with Corbin, he may have been... He's kind of wild.
Well, just think about it, though. Okay, so let's just say he rolled up out of bed and he got out of bed and that's what he put on. You knew that. Now, if he spent like 3 hours trying to get ready, and he thought that outfit was fresh, you would not have been like, bro, what are you wearing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you didn't want to break his spirit. You might look at Mandy and go, dude, help me. He's crazy. But you wouldn't have been like, dude, what in the Flavor Flav is going on right now?
Exactly.
But does that answer the question?
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Just don't break their spirit,
Yeah. I think that's definitely key, and I think that's one of the like places where we learn to like when we look back at moments like that, because I'm sure you could think back to moments that didn't necessarily have anything to do with dress, but probably something to where you had your spirit broken in some way,
Oh yeah, church. Shoot, yeah. Like the hardest thing for me was going to church with my dad.
Really?
Oh, because he didn't care a lick of what I wore all year.
Yeah.
But that Sunday we went to church, I better not look like I better not look crazy.
Yeah.
And they'd always have, because I started off going to church in Tennessee, and we went to a full gospel church, right? Mm-hmm. Women didn't wear makeup, men were, button up shirts and dress pants. man, I could walk around in my underwear on the daily in my house.
Yeah.
But church come, and if I didn't have my shirt tucked in or I didn't have my hair right,
Yeah.
and he was always there to nitpick me, and dude, I hated going to church because
Yeah.
of that. You know what I'm saying?
Huh.
And that was a time where I feel like, you know, if he had taken the time to realize that I was a teenager just learning how to get ready for this kind of stuff,
Right.
then it wouldn't have broke my spirit. And ever since then, like, even now I have trouble picking out my own stuff. My wife, I'm colorblind too, but my wife has always got to go shopping for me because I
Yeah.
hate that mess. I hate all that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like something that I'm like, okay, well, I'm fashion stupid. That's just what I've gone to. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You know, so take that as it
Yeah.
may. But yeah, my church was rough for me until I started going to church on my own.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So the relationships that you had in like at home, how do you think that like maybe affected you, like going into friendships outside of the house, romantic relationships, what
Well,
have you?
So, that's a good question. Let me think about that for a second. So, my dad and my mom were both divorced
Yeah.
when they got together,
Yeah.
and then they didn't get married until I was like 13. They had me and my sister, and then my stepbrother was around from a previous marriage. And so, the way that my dad spoke to my mom wasn't always nice because he would always make like fat jokes and that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, at first my mom was like, until she started gaining a little weight, and then she was not very happy with that, you
Right.
know. But the problem is, I started to think that was endearing,
Yeah.
and that's how I would talk to women, you know,
Yeah.
as a teenager. And so I didn't get many girlfriends because I was mean,
Yeah.
you know. And it took me a while to realize, girls don't like it when you say mean things.
Yeah.
You know, try being nice to them.
Yeah.
You know.
Fair enough.
And so that affected relationships, which is fine. I didn't end up with a teenage pregnancy, so life is good.
Yeah.
But on another note, the absolute way that I kept friends was how my dad keeps friends. Now, here's my dad in a nutshell. You go to a hospital, right? You go to the waiting room. 100 normal people in there. My dad will find the craziest joker in that room
Yeah.
and go sit down and strike up a conversation.
Yeah.
and I feel like my friends are we're a band of misfits, you know,
Yeah.
like my main friends that I grew up with.
Yeah.
You're not a misfit. But no, everybody but you. No,
Yeah.
no, but like we're just a band of misfits, and it's because I learned early on not to judge people
Yeah.
based on, you know, who they are. Now, my dad will chat up a meth head for hours,
Yeah.
but like you know my friends growing up. I mean, Lewis and Curtis, and you know Scott there for a while until recently, but.
Yeah.
We grew up differently, and we all had our mess, and that didn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's something good that I gave from my dad because he could develop relationships with just about any man.
Yeah.
You know.
So, when it comes to like the relationship that you, like we know that the relationship that you had with your dad, overall was a pretty good relationship with the exception of some of the
Yeah.
kind of crazy stuff that
Yeah,
that
I mean,
happened.
I've taken it as a good relationship. Like,
Yeah.
like I told you, you know, I had to, that period of forgiveness was big for me, for my dad. So like, I didn't really get along with him very well until we were in master's commission together. Actually, when I started to really get along with my dad, I feel, when I felt like he had a little bit of respect for me, was when I got my first job. And so I worked that job religiously because I felt like he respected me because I was making my own money, you know. And so as I got older and I started, around the time Kate and I got married, really, it's when I realized that I had a lot of resentment toward my parents.
Yeah.
And I had to think about their life growing up.
Yeah.
And I'll backtrack a little bit. So my mom's dad died of suicide when she was like 4. And my mom's mom had a seizure in front of the family when she was 14 and died.
Wow.
Okay. Now, what would you do if you were in that situation? Well, then my mom gets put in the care of her oldest sister, who lived in Missouri, and they mistreat her, right? And there's a whole slew of things. And ironically, I ended up teaching in the town that she lived in,
Huh.
and never knew that she went to school there
Yeah.
until I had been teaching there for 3 years, right? And because my mom's way of dealing with her trauma is to forget. Like
Yeah.
it's like she's the most forgetful woman ever. But it's been like that's how she processed. If I don't see it, it's not there.
Right.
You know. And so my mom's upbringing with that they abused her. Well, then my uncle that I told you raised her in California, you know, he gets a letter from my younger uncle, and it was actually on the back of a letter back, you know, before email, on the back of a letter that my uncle in California had sent to him. So he writes on the back of the letter, flips the envelope inside out, stares like, because they weren't letting them communicate.
Yeah.
And my uncle, before he died, told me, he was like, I'm surprised the letter even got to me.
Yeah.
And so he sent it over there, and he just, you know, made a list of all the things that they're doing wrong. And my uncle Gary in California got it from my uncle Ricky. And so my uncle Gary calls up and was like, why am I getting this letter from Ricky, blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, he gets a call, you know, a while later from, you know, the people in Missouri, and they goes, hey, the kids are at the airport. Click. And now they've got kids to raise.
Wow.
You know, and so what would you do if you were in that situation as the youngest kid?
That's crazy.
Right? And then your only example of
Wow.
of how to be an adult are people that are figuring out how to be an adult themselves.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then my dad, on the flip side, you know, my grandma, my grandmother, without, you know, speaking ill of her, she was a military woman. And, you know, my grandmother had a tendency to have boyfriends when my grandpa was out on the ship, you know, in the Navy. And eventually she leveled out with a man, but, you know, my dad, that was my dad's example of adulthood, you know.
Yeah.
Dad goes away, mom gets to play. And
Yeah.
then sometimes dad even played while he's away, I
Yeah.
assume, you know.
Yeah.
And so, like, what would that do to your psyche and how you treat women and how you hold? And so that's what I had to think about as an adult. As a teenager,
Yeah.
I didn't care,
Yeah.
you know. But as an adult,
Yeah, which makes sense, yeah.
as an adult and somebody that had to like really figure things out, and that's why my heart was so hardened whenever you and I first met, was
Yeah.
because, and I didn't even realize that, like, and I didn't go to therapy or anything. Like, this is something that I had to work out on my own, you
Yeah.
know. And honestly, like you said, some people don't get to go out of their area. It took getting out of my area to realize that I need to work on these things.
Right.
Because, like, if I didn't go to master's commission, I guarantee you I would have been on my mom's couch until now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because I was to the point where if I didn't do something now,
Yeah.
I was going to do nothing.
You know, I feel like that was the experience of like a lot of people that went to master's commission, is that they were in spaces where they had to make some kind of a change in order to be able to see something different,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the importance of like sharing like your life experience. Like my grandma, she passed away when I was, oh man, I was in my 20s, but like I had one last conversation with her. And it was the first conversation that I had with her in like 2 years,
Yeah.
right? And you know, I was listening to some of the things she was telling me, and she was talking about how she used to work in Detroit at the Ford factory.
Yeah.
And she was telling me all the different ways that she got from Florida, and she moved to Illinois, and she moved to all these different places, and I'm getting all this experience and some of the times that, because she was born in like 1930 or something like that.
Jeez.
So she was just giving me some of the examples.
Yeah.
I was trying to get as much as I could,
Yeah.
and I really wish that I could have recorded the conversation. But like a lot of the stuff that she was talking about, like would have been stuff that would have been beneficial for me to know before she was gonna die.
Yeah.
Right? And like the same with my grandpa, but I didn't get to have this last conversation with him. He had a really tough struggle with diabetes, and I mean, limbs getting cut off before eventually he passed away. But like, he was a business owner. He owned a couple of different houses, and like just a little bit of information from each one of those different like areas, what it looked like to be a man. He taught me a lot. He taught me how to throw a baseball.
Yeah.
He taught me how to use a lawnmower. He taught, you know what I'm saying? Like some really important stuff. He was the one that got to show that to me.
See, you know, I've been focusing a lot on my dad, but you know, I can give credit to my uncles. You know,
Yeah.
I had 3 uncles. One of them passed away a couple years ago. But basically, my uncle was like my grandpa.
Yeah.
Right? My Uncle Gary, the one that died. But, you know, he was the guy that when I moved to Tennessee and I got my first job, he drove to Tennessee from California just to make me open a savings account.
Wow.
You know, he was the one that made sure that I had that. He was also the guy that, like, I called him on my wedding day because my parents were being crazy, and my parents tried to stay in Forsyth and cancel the hotel. And I mean, you met my grandma; they're gonna be late, and they do that, right? And so I had them a hotel in Springfield, and they canceled it. And I called my uncle. My uncle paid for the hotel, called them and chewed them out, and made them get up there, right?
Yeah.
So like, my uncle Ricky, he was the kid, the man that put a hammer in my hand and was like, "Hey, go nail those boards," you know, things that boys need.
Right.
You know, and then my Uncle Ronnie, man, he was the only one that like trusted me with sharp objects.
Yeah.
Right. And so like
I got a son that's similar to you. Everybody's got those kids where they're like, son, we're gonna hold off on you touching guns, knives,
stay away
Phillips head screwdrivers,
So-
anything that might hurt you.
But my Uncle Ronnie actually let me build things,
Yeah.
and like he'd let me cook in the kitchen with him and that sort of thing. Like between the 3 of them, I had decent examples of manhood.
Yeah.
And then going up into my teenage years, we moved away from them. They were in California. They've all moved to Tennessee since because California's nuts.
Yeah.
But my dad kind of took over that place whenever we moved, and he got clean, and things were going better. But boy, I tell you, the mixture of those men made me who I am today, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. So check this out. So we talked about some of the positive and negative things from like the different examples, both relationally, family examples, and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we talked a little bit about this before I put the camera on.
Mm-hmm.
The beautiful thing about like life in general, right? Not just because like I feel like sometimes we like romanticize like what a man's man is, right? Like somebody, like one of my perspectives of what a man's man is somebody that was like ripped like crazy.
Yeah.
Somebody that could build a house. Somebody that could
Fight.
Right, fight.
Yeah.
Buy cars. Take people shopping and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think sometimes we give way too much attention to those things, even though those things are important, right? These are all useful skills. But like, there are some small things, small intricate things that like on the grand scheme seem like they're not that big of a deal. Like it's almost kind of like that transition from whenever you're a kid, right?
Yeah.
And you're in the house and the only men that you know are in the family, whether it's uncles, dad, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, my hero is my dad. And then you hit school and you're like, oh, well, maybe my gym teacher is my hero.
Yeah.
Or then you get to the point where you're like, oh, well, Michael Jordan is my hero.
Yeah.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson is my hero. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like all these different people. And it's because we see them and kind of like what you were saying, like it's the star effect, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody's giving them attention. They're getting all the girls. They're getting all the success and all that.
Yeah.
But like, there's beauty in that regular dude.
Yeah.
And like, me growing up, like, I was never like a super popular guy.
Yeah.
Right? And honestly, I didn't really experience any like major popularity till I got to Master's Commission. Right?
And
So
man, and when you got that, you felt like you were up here.
Yeah.
I remember. I had a little bit of that too.
Absolutely.
I remember because like you went from. I remember, dude. I went from being barely looked at to he can do music. Let's
Right.
Exactly.
I'm like, man, I got this going and that going, and like there for a period of time, like I was like chasing that, right? I'm like, oh man, like that feels good. That affirmation of some of the things that I haven't really showed anybody, like feels good. And then like I realized that like life is not about that feeling. Like the things that God has allowed for me to both go through and to contribute to the world, from the big ways that I contribute to the smaller ways that I contribute, are things that are people's saving grace, right?
Yeah.
Like in the obedience that we have, uh, like in the lifestyles that we live, like we see people's lives change. And then on the other side of the coin, in our disobedience to who we are as people, people's lives are still changed, right? And so, man, I think one of the best gifts that we can give to like people overall is just being who we are wholly and completely. And for me personally, man, I believe that that we should be pursuing what it is that God has created us to be. There's a scripture that says all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose. And a lot of people take that scripture and they kind of strip it of its meaning.
All things are going to work for me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. When in the scripture it says all things work together for the good of those. Last time
Collective.
I checked, right?
Yeah.
Last time I checked, those was not singular. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, like in all the different spaces, I think one of the best things that we can do is do the best that we can, pursue God in a way that that honors Him and also honors other people, and then when we do mess up, ask for forgiveness, just like a man should. Make it right, just like a man should. And then pull somebody to the side and say, hey, I made this mistake. Don't do it like I did it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is I hear that and I'm thinking, me 10 years ago would never have said that. Me 10 years ago would have been like, I'm not admitting anything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But like, it's that vulnerability too.
Yeah, but the vulnerability is on the same vein as accountability.
Yeah.
Because when you're vulnerable, you're literally saying, "This is me." It's like I tell my students all the time. You know, I don't want to hear the voice that's on the radio. I don't want you to sound like this person.
Yeah.
I want to hear your voice.
Yeah.
You know, your voice is important, and I'm going to teach you how to use it. You know, but the problem is, if you're in band and you mess up, you got a clarinet. You can blame that clarinet.
Yeah.
You can blame that snare drum. You're singing, it's all you.
Yeah.
It's very vulnerable, right? And especially at a period of time when they're going through voice changes and you get cracks and pops and all that,
Right.
you know, you got to let them, you got to let them feel comfortable with that. And that's hard. It's the same concept with your life. It's very, very hard to say, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It's very hard to say, I made a mistake. Because again, disrespect will close doors that apologies can't open. So you don't know whether that admission is going to slap that book closed on you.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's the most vulnerable place, right? Is not only because it's already hard enough for people to like say they're sorry, right?
Yeah.
But like, it's almost like we have been like, especially as kids, right? We're kind of telling the kids, hey, when you make a poor choice, you mess up, you say you're sorry. And it's almost like conditioning them to believe that if you say sorry, that it fixes it. Well, I think part of what also should be a part of that process, because apologizing is important, is understanding that that apology may not fix whatever it is that you screwed up, and you need to be okay with that. And let it hit you in such a way that like you think twice before you make that decision again. Everybody is responsible for whatever choices that they make, right? You can't like even people's like perspectives of like a faith, right?
Yeah.
Like I could be wrong, you could be wrong, the pastor down the road could be wrong, the person that's on the street could be wrong.
Yeah.
Right? But the biggest difference is when we are deciding what decisions we're gonna make, we have to take into consideration what the consequences of those choices are going to be.
You gotta own your decision, bro.
And so if you make the decision, you can't say, "Oh, well, I didn't know." It's like, if you didn't know, that's on you.
If you didn't know, why didn't you think about it?
Right.
Well,
Right.
and a lot of times, especially my kids, right? My children,
Yeah.
I didn't know is usually the cop out answer for, oh crap, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like most time we know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now there are the instances where you make decisions based on, no prior knowledge, where you
Yeah.
really don't know.
Right.
But most of the time, if you're making big decisions, you messed up.
Yep.
You know that, hey, this was a possibility. And it's important to own up to those things. And honestly, I'm not perfect at it either. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, it's one of those things where in life and in raising kids and teaching kids and everything, like, you got to be able to say, this is me,
Yeah.
and the me that I am has to get better.
Yeah.
And the minute you think that you're perfect is the minute that you're going to be flipped upside down and be vulnerable again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, man. I got a couple of questions for you, and
Go
then
ahead, man.
we're gonna wrap up. So I feel like as an adult in general, right? Like, there are responsibilities that you have to that you got to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't maintain those responsibilities, then it has the potential to like completely flip your life upside down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's relationship. I'm sorry, that's responsibilities in relationship. That is responsibility in your work ethic, and so on and so forth. So that you can think of, like, what is like one of the first times that you can remember like having to take responsibility for something?
Are you talking about in your relationship with kids or in
In general, like
In
from
general?
as early as you can remember, what's one of the first times you can think of that you had to take responsibility for something?
Oh man, yeah. So think. Well, when I was when I was in the 5th grade, I decided I wasn't going to do no schoolwork.
Oh man,
Now,
I just had flashbacks.
Now-
All I can remember is yeah.
no, but I didn't.
My bad, parents.
But I didn't get a whooping though. I should have, but I didn't. So here's the deal. I just shoved all my work in my bag. I didn't do it, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about how it was out here. You went to school in Missouri. I went to school in
Yeah.
California. But they didn't give you, A, B, C, D, F
Yeah.
until 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
You can mess around from kindergarten to 4th grade,
Yeah.
and you still go to the next grade, and everything's fine, right?
Satisfactory.
Right? Exactly, right? And so, and I think they kind of do, they do something like that here
Yeah,
because
something like
my daughter
that.
goes to school, but it gets a little bit different the older they get. But I remember looking at my very first progress report. It was all Fs in the 5th grade. All Fs. And I went to him and I was like, look, I got all this work in here. I'll do it. I'll bring it back to you tomorrow. I'm trying to, like, please just let me do it. And he's like, no. Like, my 5th grade
You
teacher.
said face to music,
His
literally.
Mr. Davis. His name is Mr. Davis. I'll never forget him. And my brother come by because he was waiting on me to get to the car because Mom was supposed to be picking us up from school.
Yeah.
And it was one of the rare occasions Mom was picking us up from school because usually we walked home. If we was walking home, I'd drop that joke in a sewer drain on the way home. But I'm in there and I'm crying. I'm asking him please. My brother goes up to the window, sees me crying, and he runs. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no. So he went and got my mom because all he knew was big bro was crying.
Yeah.
And my mom gets in there and I'm I'm like hyperventilating, crying. And my mom's like, oh my gosh, Josh, these grades are horrible. And I'm like, ah! And I'm thinking I'm going to die when I get home.
Right.
And I got home and my mom thought I was lying. I was like, all my work's in my backpack and he won't let me do it. I'm still trying to throw it on the teacher, right? My mom opens my backpack, pong, it was like full of work, right? And she was like, your backpack is kind of thick. Zip. Like, I put the whole semester's work shoved in this backpack, right? And so I had to own up to that.
Yeah.
And he worked out a deal where I barely passed, you know, but it was.
He said, I'm not keeping this kid in this class.
Exactly. Now that was the year. Yeah, that was the year that we moved to Missouri. So like I was only there for one semester, and then I went to Forsyth for a semester. But it that when I got to Forsyth, you better believe I had better grades because I wasn't about to. I wasn't about to be lazy again.
Yeah. That's funny. So, what's one of the ways that you having that experience that you try to like look out for ways to make sure that your daughters have like a solid path to be able to have the potential to make better choices?
I'm involved in their schooling. And I feel like I kind of have to be because I'm a teacher in the district that they go to school in.
Yeah.
But my parents weren't really involved in my schooling.
Yeah.
Like, all they did was I got in trouble for bad grades. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But to be fair, neither one of them graduated high school. They didn't know how to support me in that. But they, more or less, they dogged on me about it and tried to encourage me that way.
Yeah.
But that wasn't exactly. I mean, you could dog on somebody the cows come home. That doesn't make them a better person.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm really involved with Eleanor and Felicity, and they're both doing really well in school right now.
That's good.
And that's just because, you know, Kate's a genius,
Yeah.
and my wife, for those of you that don't know, and I think that the fact that we hold ourselves accountable to their schooling, unlike what my parents did, is a testament. I mean, my parents, I never got in trouble for bad grades in high school, not because I had good grades, but because I checked the mail before they did. You know what I'm saying? I would literally check the mail, look at my report card, throw it in the trash, go in the house, you know.
Yeah.
And they never caught on until I graduated by the skin of my teeth, but...
Just the statement until I graduated sounds like it was by the grace of God.
I graduated with a 1.6 GPA.
Sheesh.
You know what an F is, right?
Yeah.
It's a 1.5.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Now in college it was a lot higher, but
So we got two more.
okay, good.
So as dad, and you just kind of share however you want. Has there been a time that you have messed up with mom, and then had to come back and fix it with the girls? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's been a few times. Let me try to find one that won't get me in trouble.
All right. As little detail as you need to give. You can just give a general situation and then like kind of how you navigated helping them to work through that.
So, wife and I got into an argument once. Kids heard it. They didn't like it. They were scared.
Yeah.
You know, and the kids, so their brain automatically goes to what's happening with mom and dad.
Yeah.
You know, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was flat out wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But you know, sometimes.
Did you hear that, Kate? No.
And she knows. but so sometimes, and this sometimes is taken on as a manly trait, like as a man, right? Which is so stupid, but it is. You'll fight to be right, even when you know you're wrong. You know what I'm talking about? Like the whole argument, I'm going, why am I?
Yeah. Josh,
like,
just stop.
Like I have nothing to say against this. Like I have no defense, but I'm making a defense because I want to be right, you know. And toward the end of it, it was apparent that I couldn't dig myself out of that hole.
Yeah.
And we were loud and we were talking, and the kids upstairs heard us, and we stopped fighting when one of them went, "Stop fighting!" And we're like, "Oh no, this isn't good." So I had to eat crow, and then I had to go in with mom and the girls and be like, "Look, Dad's wrong," you know. And so that's probably the most kosher example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Man, I'm reliving it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
PTSD.
He's like, it's getting hot in here.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming down from Springfield and spending time talking to me. It was good to catch up. I One thing that I always try to do is, well, I say always. This is only my second guess, but one thing I'm gonna start doing is just ask them, like, when it comes to building better relationships across the board, whether it's romantic, with you and your kids, with friends, just for if you were giving somebody advice, what would be a good place to start making better relationships, regardless of what the trauma is that somebody might experience, regardless, just a general advice. How would I start? They're sitting with you, Josh. I'm trying to get better at my relationships across the board. What would you say?
Emotion is a bad thing to depend on.
Okay.
A very bad thing to depend on. It's a very good thing to have
Yeah.
because it's what makes us human, but it's a very bad thing to depend on.
Can you
A
tell
lot
me
of
more
us-
about that?
A lot of us hold on to people that will hurt us due to emotion.
Yeah.
I love this person, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about romantic love. I'm talking about like
Yeah.
friendship love. We'll hold on to people that will hurt us because they've always been there or because they did something nice for me once, you know?
Yeah.
And these people can take advantage of you. And I've had to learn the hard way that it's okay to love them over there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's okay to say, look, man, I am a better person when I'm not around this person.
Yeah.
I'm a better person when this person isn't speaking negative things into my life or bringing negativity around or influencing my life around me. And so that can look like a family member.
Yeah.
That can look like a best friend. That can look like your neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, you have to, and I'm not saying be rude or mean to anybody, and I'm not even saying cut people out of your life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you might have to, but that's definitely an option. But emotion is a lot of times the enemy of wisdom. And so if you find yourself constantly clinging to that feeling of, well, I have to be with this person,
Yeah.
you need to reevaluate why.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you might find, hey, I really do, you know,
Yeah.
but sometimes you might find out, well, why am I holding on to this person that's done nothing but cause me misery?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think if you're getting better at relationships, you need to get better at picking people that you can be in a good relationship with.
Yeah.
Because there's some people that it's impossible to be
Yeah.
in a good relationship
Yeah.
with.
100%.
Impossible. No matter how good they were to you in the past or how good they might be in the future,
Yeah.
it a lot of times it has nothing to do with who you are, who they are. It has everything to do with the fact that y'all don't work
Yeah.
well together.
Yeah.
You know? So pick your friends. You
Yeah.
know? And that's why the older you get, the less friends you have in your circle.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. Well, man, I appreciate that, and I'm sure those that are watching or listening, they'll appreciate that too. Yeah, that's it, man.
Sweet.
That's it.
Well, let me just say, you are a superhero, bro. Seriously. What, 13 kids, 14 kids, something like that?
So, this is going to sound way more morbid than what it needs to be, but both dead and alive, total of 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Man, you are a superhero, my guy.
That are crazy.